Shalom, shalom, everyone, and welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Uzi Alewi. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Welcome, everyone, to another Tanakh review, where the teacher will be reviewing the Haftarah for Pekudei this week. The teacher being Nasik, Zurishaddai Yehudah. First and foremost, we give glory and honor to the great King, Yehudah, the King of the universe, the Lord of hosts, who allows us to be here, who woke us all up this morning, who gives us the breath of life. And I'd like to wish everyone a early Shabbat Shalom and uplift the name of the Creator of heaven and earth. Thank you, the Most High God, for all things and everything. Also acknowledging the leader of our congregation and our organization, even Chief Prince Yehudah Ben Yisrael, that the Most High God would bless him and his family and his household, and that the Most High God would always be with him and guide his steps. I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with all the people who call upon his name, and that the Most High God will grant them peace, and even that he will grant them understanding, even of all these words. So we're going to move straight ahead, and I'm going to introduce to you one of my teachers, even one of my mentors, Nasik, Zurishaddai Yehudah. How are you doing, Nasik?
Great, fine, good, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respects to the platform on D.C.B platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel Ben Yisrael, to the host, Chief Uziel, to the princes, chiefs, rabbis, Kohanim, Marim that's out there, and brothers and sisters. I greet you in the time of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem and early Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to also say Adonai Septai Titaku Piyagi Tilatheka. O Lord, thou my lips, my mouth shall declare thy praise. We'll be covering the last portion of the book of Exodus, which we refer to as Shemot, the book of Shemot. And we'll be going over the portion called Pekudei. But I like to always go back a little bit and why hell in reference to when Moses assembled. And the thing is that in why hell, the last Sidra, they actually focus on getting everything together and in the process of actually doing the work. But there's a couple of things I want to bring on. But first, before I do that, I'll be doing a Haftarah from the Ashkenazic portion when I get to that, which would be 1 Kings 7, verse 51 to 8 and 21. That's the Ashkenazic portion. The Sephardic portion would be doing 1 Kings 7, 40 to 50. They have, since I shared part of that information during an irregular season, I like to go ahead on and focus on the Ashkenazi aspects. I feel it fits more with the concluding portion of Exodus. And usually the Ashkenazi portions is usually longer most of the times. But also I like to focus on, when we go back, I like to go back into YHL, and I like to just focus on a couple of verses in YHL, which was the 35th chapter of Exodus and the fifth verse. All right. And it says, take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord, whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, the Lord's offering. And then it goes on to describe what it is. But the word kehu may eat to him, right? Kehu to him, made to him, which is actually take from yourself. You know, so, and when you say take from yourself, what do that mean? So I just want to emphasize that before we go forward. When it's taken from yourself, it actually is saying that I don't focus on, do I have enough to give? when it comes to supporting an institution for the Creator. I don't wait till I have enough, till I strike it rich, till I get this big windfall. You know, in various places where various members call upon the Creator's name, you don't say, well, if I hit this, if I do that, blase, blase, I would support. No, the books tell you, if you have a willing heart, and only then take it from yourself. That means that you're taking it now, knowing that this is an important enterprise, and you're willing to support it on your endeavors or on your own personal progress. So that's what I find very interesting, that it says take from yourself, as opposed to, take, from among them, as a translation, which is more literal in that particular portion. And then there's one more thing I'd like to bring out in the 35th chapter, the 22nd verse, that I find that I spoke on, but I don't think I spoke on it extensively, which is the 22nd verse in that same chapter, where it says, I'll pick it up from the 22nd. And it came both men and women, as many out were willing, as were willing hearted, and brought nose rings and earrings and signet rings, etc. All right. Now, usually use the term the men upon the women, upon the women. So that means in the sense of a reverse order. In the English, we get the idea, when we says, and they came both men and women, but actually the women preceded that of the men. The men followed the women in bringing offerings to the Creator, whereas when we deal with the sin of the golden calf, it's mostly the men. Aaron told them, break the jewels off their, your wives, your sons, your daughters' ears, and all that stuff in your own ears. But only the men, pretty much, when we read it carefully and look at it, but what they had for the calf. And it couldn't have been that much participation because of how, how few people died in it. So now when we look at, when it deals with the women, we don't find where the women was pretty much involved in a lot of incidents of debauchery and stuff like that, idolatry in that sense. We get an example of another incident 40 years later, where the men was the ones involved with the women's of Midian and Moab in the sin of Baal Peor. It was the men that tend to be involved in a lot of stuff. So what I'm bringing out here is that sometimes the women might be much more spiritually inclined to do God's will when their heart is there to do that. And they support an institution. When an individual don't have, recognize that the assistance of the women and the qualities of women in their organizations, is of immense value, or even in the nation, and being the first teachers of the children is an immense value, that the institution does not grow that well. Whereas in the enterprise here, we find that in any religious organization, if they got a lot of women in there, that organization tend to thrive strong. We have a contemporary group of sisters today called Phenomenal Women, and they do a lot of works. Not only gathering sisters together, for us in knowledge and support of the goals of Hashem and the Creator, but also that they do charitable works outside the organizations as well. So, and that's a great thing. And we got brothers that's doing the same thing with the Israelite Men Alliance. I know that they are MA, and various other groups. But I'm just saying that when women tend to get involved in a charitable movement, in a movement they believe in, they tend to go all out in it. And so, hence, our first fundraiser, collective national fundraising and building, they had more than enough. So now I'm just going to fast forward into the Sidra Pekudei, which has come from Exodus the 38th chapter, and picking up from the 21st verse, and it goes to the 40th chapter and 38th verse, which concludes the book of Exodus. But I just want to go look a little bit into the beginning of the Sidra, which is said, these are the accounts of the tabernacle, even the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were rendered according to the commandments of Moses through the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. I just, before I even go to the next one, next portion here, I just want to focus on a thing here. First of all, we're talking about accounting. Pekudei is like accounting, not just counting items, but it's like an inventory of assets and expenses. So now this is so unique because it's not, this don't fit the normal accounting source when we talk about being audited. All right, this don't fit that in the normal sense, but it's still certain things I'd like to bring out and highlight as we move on before I go into the Haftarah. One of the things is that it's called the Mishkan Adu. You know what I mean? The tabernacle of, you know what I mean, of a witness or testimony. This is the first time you find that particular term. So now, what is a testimony about? Well, we already had built the golden calf, and Moses had prayed and come back with the second set of tablets. And now we begin this great enterprise of building the tabernacle, the Mishkan, you know, a place for God to be able to dwell amongst us and creating space. And what is interesting in this is that it shows now that it does not only has a place where God will commune and be able to dwell with us, but it also shows that God had forgiven us for allowing the sin of the golden calf going on by calling and using that particular name here in the beginning of Pekudei. Because Pekudei also not only mean accounting, it also is used in the sense of an appointment, like we were finding in the book of, in the Sidra, not so, when you're appointed to certain positions. So here it is that this whole enterprise takes on a lot of things concerning our character, our atonement, and our beginning, getting closer back to the Creator. It's kind of strange that we have some semblance of that when we say Yom Kippur is around the 7th month. And then after the Yom Kippur, 5 days later, we built sukkot, booths, and huts, like a mini wooden, and it's out of wood. You know, a tent could be all material cloth, and there's a couple of frames to hold it up. But it was told that we built a sukkah out of wood. It's that, and it says as a memorial of us coming out of Egypt. But we also had tents in the wilderness. So why would this be a reference? And then it shows that we're supposed to constantly remember when we sin and how God forgave us for that sin, not just leaving out of Egypt, but how he forgave us for the sin of the golden calf. And so we're reminded by being humbled every year for those 7 days dwelling in booths as a memorial of our departure from the land, the land of Egypt. And as we look further into this, Ithamar himself happened to be over anything that as opposed to, we know that the book is not in chronological order, but we know Eleazar was wanted to be a priest, and he's supposed to deal with the furnitures on the inside. But when it comes down to erecting and moving the actual Mishkan, the tabernacle itself, it was under his brother Ithamar's charge in dealing with that. So that's why his name is mentioned here, as far as the assembly of this through the service of Levites, because he's over the Levites' immediate supervisor to make sure they carry this over here, take this board over here, take this, this socket over there. So he's in charge of making sure that those items that we use to build the tabernacle are not only transported properly, but also brought back and erected in its proper manner. Then it goes on the 20, it's in the 22nd verse, it says of the same 38th chapter, Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses, and with him Aholiab, the son of Chisma, of the tribe of Dan, a craftsman and a skillful worker, and a weaver in colors, blue and in purple, and in scarlet and fine linen. All the gold that was used for the work, and all the work that of the sanctuary, even of the gold of the offering, was 29 talents. All right, and 730 shekels after the shekels of the sanctuary. And the silver of them that were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,703 score, and 15 shekels after the shekels of the sanctuary. A bekel, a head, that is half a shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary, for everyone that passes over to them that are numbered from 20 years old and upward, and for 600,000 and 3,550 men. So he had 600,000, 603,550 men that left out of Egypt, men of war from the age of 20 and upward. I'm always tending to be getting that number wrong when I try to remember it in my head. And then it goes on to say that, and 100 talents of silver were for the casting of the sockets of the sanctuary, and the sockets of the veil, and 100 sockets for the 100 talents, a talent for a socket, and of the 1,000 even, and of the 1,000 775 shekels. He made hooks for the pillars and overlaid their capitals, and made fillets for them. And the brass of the offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. And therewith he made the sockets to the door of the tent of meeting, and the brazen altar, and the brazen grating for it, and all the vessels of the altar, and the sockets of the court round about, and the sockets of the gates of the court, and all the pins of the tabernacles, and all the pins of the courts round about. All right, now I just want to stop there for a minute because I'm not going to read this whole thing. But what I want to focus on and bring out is this, that as I started off, I said, it's like an audit and a testimony. Now, in the beginning, I just want people to make sure they didn't miss the beginning of it, and it says that in the beginning, there's a particular portion, and it said, these are the accounts of the tabernacle, even the tabernacle, the testimonies that were rendered according to the command of Moses. All right. That means that the Creator never told Moses to go ahead on and explain what you did with the money. Most organizations are destroyed with the money. And so he gave an accounting of what he did with the material. Now, what is strange in this accounting, like I said, it don't fit the former accounting and audit. If a person is going to be audited, that what is omitted is the wool. How much cloth was used? How much wood was used? How much wood was in escrow? How much wood was for the fire? We don't have a clue. We know how many boards it took to erect it, but how much wood was used for the firewood? We know that we had cloth, we had wool, we had linen, we had the priestly garments. And then what's even stranger is that we don't get an account of the gold. How much gold, how the gold was used. We just say how many talents came in, but we don't find out exactly how all the gold was used. We read about some things that had gold in it, but did it take up all the 29 talents? Or it took more than 29 talents. So when we look into this here carefully, you say, what's going on here? One of the things is that we know what the silver, how much silver came in, and we know how the silver was used. We know how much copper or brass, as you might call it, came in, and we know how the copper and brass was used. We don't know how much wood was used, and we don't know how much material was used. And we don't know how the gold was used to the utmost. All right, so now there we have questions that we could bring up. Now, Moses giving this on his own as showing that I'm not taking this. Normally in fundraisers, some people would say my cost in raising funds. When you send to maybe the children fund or whatever the case is, all the money you send ain't going directly to those different funds and institutions, because the people that run the institution getting a salary and getting paid for the cost of bringing this thing to the people. So therefore, a lot of money can be hidden. But in this particular case, and why would Moses bring this out and then omit certain things? If I'm going to show you that I'm not involved in messing with your money, then I should talk about every little item. But then you got to say, all right, a ring might be worth a lot because of the jewelry might be shaped and carved. But when it's melted down, you only deal with it by the weight. That's one thing of dealing with the metals. Silver, no matter what kind of design it was before, when it's melted down for the purpose, you only deal with it according to the weight. Copper, no matter what kind of vessel or artwork it was before, when it's melted down, you only deal with it by the weight. But we don't buy material by the weight. We don't buy wood by the weight. So therefore, when we buy wood, we just say, I need so many boards, blase, blase. How many sides the boards? Doesn't dust. When we buy material, all right, give me about a yard of this, a yard of that, 5 yards of this, 5 yards of that. But then when you design material and make certain items of it, its value can increase, or if you just tear it, its value can decrease. So those are some things to consider. As we say, Pekudei means an audit, and it's an audit to show that Moses is trying to, show that his integrity, that I'm not being rich. Now, I'm going to share this story before I go on into the Pekudei, but I'm just sharing these things here because sometimes the community is important, and sometimes the individual is important. All leaders got to be able not only be in transparent. Well, God gonna see through us anyway, but saying, well, we know God know my heart. All right, the Creator may know your heart. I mean, not me, but the Creator knows your heart. So since the Creator knows your heart, it's never a question about him being wrong about assessing your character. But your fellow human beings don't know your heart. And some people have this saying, I don't care what you think about me. I know what the Creator think about me, and that's it. As long as the Creator knows I ain't do this and this. But leaders got to be transparent, not only in that answer to the Creator, but you also got to answer to people. That's what a good leader does. It answers not only to the Creator, but answer to people. So one of the life's lessons is that Moses trying to say, look, I was not commanded by God to do this. But when all this money coming in, and I tell you it was enough, don't bring no more, and I had to restrain you from bringing it, I want you to know that I wasn't using your money. And then there's another lesson I'd like to bring on as we go, is that, and there's so many areas, but I'm just going to try to keep it concise for now on Pekudei. There's so many areas to talk about, but one thing is this, that though, I'm going to give a story, a little story. There was a man that was working one week, and he noticed that and this is going to be reference to the gold being not accounted for. He was working one week, and he realized that he was $100 short on his check. So he went to the boss and said, look, I noticed it was $100 less on my check this week. What happened? And the boss said, you didn't realize that it was $100 over from your check last week, and you didn't. So you didn't notice the $100 that you was over on your check, and you overpaid last week on your check. So therefore, this week, you noticed $100 less on your check. And the man said, now I could take one mistake, but I can't take two mistakes. The moral is that if you only had 29 talents of gold, and you had to put more gold in the place to finish all that, the thread of gold and the material and the clothes, and you had other items and vessels of gold, and plus a lot of stuff overlaid with gold on the interior. So people only gave 29 talents of gold. But when we look at the size, that the socket, each socket weighed a talent of silver, And we only gave 29 talents of gold. And then you had a menorah that's all gold, and it get wider at the bottom. And you had the very lid of the Aron Kodesh, the Ark of the Covenant, solid gold with, carabines on top. That was solid gold. Then you had stuff inlaid and outlaid, overlaid with gold. Then where all that gold comes from? So therefore, the people only gave 29 talents of gold, but they gave a bunch of silver. So nobody gonna ask, all right, we only gave 29 talents of gold. We know it took more than 29 talents to do all this work. So Moses didn't have to explain that what he did with the gold, because nobody gonna ask where the extra gold come from. It had to come from Moshe himself to build such a great enterprise. So therefore, the stuff that he didn't have to contribute to on his own, outside, that came straight from the people, that was utilized to the limit, that's where he gave an itemized and a uses for the silver and for the brass. And the material, like I said, the material, you never go by the pound. Material become valuable in its uses and how it's styled. All right, so that being said, in Pekudei, those are some of the things I like to bring out in Pekudei. And the final thing is, like I said, it's more of an individual, but I'm not going to belabor it now in this particular portion. Maybe another time, or you could discuss it, that normally Pekudei and YAH is actually read together, and one is dealing with a community type thing, and the other one's dealing with an individual thing. So when is the individual is more important, and when is the community is more important? All right, so those are some of the lessons we could get from that. And then I'm gonna go into the Haftarah portion, and then I'm gonna hopefully bring a close to it. So we're gonna be going to the Book of Kings, and it'll be 1 Kings, the 7th chapter, and we're gonna be picking it up from the 51st verse, which is the Ashkenazic Haftarah for Pekudei, and they're gonna go all the way to the 8th chapter and the 21st verse. So if you're ready, Chief, we're gonna pick it up from there.
Can you hear me clear?
Yes, very clear.
All right, so we are in the book of 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 51. Hallelujah. Thus all the work that King Solomon wrought in the house of Yahweh was finished. And Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and put them in the treasuries of the house of Yahweh. All right.
It tell you that, and Solomon brought in all and the things which David his father had dedicated, and they tell you what they were: the silver and the gold and the vessels. And what did he do? He put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. If he gave that for the service of the Creator and for the building of the house, why did not Solomon use that? Since this was David's intention. But Solomon didn't even touch none of that. And then we know the tabernacle itself did not have a treasury per se. It was on a day-to-day, daily basis. So now we got the first temple itself, and now we talk about we got a vault, a treasure room inside the temple. That's supposed to be the house of the Creator. So there's a lot of questions brought about why did Solomon have not used it, and some of the questions they bring out, answers they try to present is that other nations would say, look, the house wasn't only made great only because of what their father David took from us. So they might be envious of it, being supposed to be a house of prayer for all people later on. Said that's some of our stuff we took and built the house with. Or other answers is, that they try to bring and present is that during the time of famine in David's time, that he decided to not touch the actual stuff he dedicated for the Creator in a time of famine to feed the people. So Solomon they didn't want to use it for either one of those two reasons. These are just some answers that's presented on that. But then we notice also that when David was on the run from Saul, that he had eat the showbread from the priest Achimelech.
Right.
Yeah, which is strange because his name is, my brother is king, so he's like family, and he ate the showbread, so he had, and when we know if you eat anything of the holy thing unaware, you're supposed to pay back a certain amount, which we'll get to later on in the book of Leviticus. So there's a lot of questions and answers that's given, but not necessarily mean that we can't certify any one of those answers. But these are some of the reasons that's given why Solomon did not use those things that his father David specifically dedicated for the building of the Beit HaMikdash. So, and let's continue the 8th chapter.
We're in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 8, verse 1. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, unto the king Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of...
All right, the city of David, which is Zion. All right, Zion itself is like a nickname. It's almost like saying Yeshurun, so to speak, because the city of David or the city of Zion, they call that as a flop, but it's really technically not a real city of Zion. Though they said that the city was the city of David, and he would like to make it, consider it to be like Zion, but it's not a real city technically. We say this is the city of Zion. That's why it's called the city of Zion. I just want to bring that part out as we move on. And he assembled the elders because not only, when talking about the elders and the heads of the tribes, the elders would know who belonged to the tribe and who's actually in charge, even though you got a monarchy. Because now you're into the third season of a monarchy. You had Saul, then you had David, now you got Shalom, Solomon. So now this only 3 monarchies in. They still had the actual tribal heads of the princes of the different tribes. You had the leaders of the actual top prince of Dan, Issachar, and all that. But then you had the elders that also recognized that these are the guys that represent the tribes today. So when you talk about the elders, like a status that, oh yeah, I'm respected for my status, but I'm on the sideline. This is the guy running things. So that's basically why it say you assemble the elders, and then you assemble the princes of the tribes and the nobilities, because the elders recognize, yeah, this guy qualified to speak for this tribe, and he's the one that's next in line. He ain't the only prince or the only chief, but this the one that's actually going to speak for the tribe. That's why you assemble them like that. And plus, the elders know how things should be going. And they brought up the Ark of the Covenant. All right. So now in the second verse.
Verse 2 reads, "And all of the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast in the month Etanim, which is the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. And they brought up."
Now, when we look at it, at the feast, a lot of people don't think of Yom Teruah as a feast. But it's in the 7th month, it's a Rosh Chodesh. And we know automatically that when he dealt with the dedication and everything, when we do the research, that it's considered at the feast, he got things going. And we know when it was a celebration that lasted, 14 days into the thing, and he did an extra, 7 days in there. So, we ain't talking about the feast of Sukkot, because it'd be only a 1 week feast. That means they had to overlap part of Yom Kippur as well in that particular time. Because we got the actual time when they actually left, and Solomon sent them home at the dedication, which was I believe the 23rd of the month of Etanim. Etanim itself is another term for strength, because you have more crops in there. Your crops, you really finish your harvest season, and and then you're going to begin to have sort of like the rainy season. But just some areas I like to focus on about the 7th month. There's very few months that's named in scriptures before the Babylonian captivity. But go ahead on from the 4th verse.
Verse 4, "And they brought up the ark of Yahweh, and the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. Even these did the priests and the Levites bring up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep, oxen, that could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of Yahweh unto its place, and to the sanctuary of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim..."
All right. Now, one of the things I like to bring out is that they brought up the ark, and from the 4th verse, of the Lord, and the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. So what is important here is that sanctuary, the Mishkan itself, though a lot of people don't like to read about the Mishkan, they didn't destroy it. They disassembled it and brought that up like it was a holy artifact.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So we think about the ark. We focus on they're bringing up the ark, they're bringing it up to put up. But what about all them boards and all that stuff and all them sockets that was actually used for the Beit Hamikdash, the Mishkan rather, the tabernacle? All those sockets, all them hooks, all them different other stuff that was used as far as the actual structure. What did they do with that? So that they looked at as being sacred and holy. They ain't just tore it down and say, oh, we just going to take the precious metal. They said it brought all that with them because that's how you're supposed to move it, at that particular time. And that's important to be able to move it at a certain way, in a certain fashion. So when we tend not to want to look at the tabernacle story or the temple story, and I'm building the temple, building the tabernacle, and we focus more on winning friends and influence people to a better way of life and better lifestyle, as opposed to bringing them, presenting them with a holy lifestyle from the very onset, because you got to have a place or a space for somebody to go. And you got to say what makes them worthwhile coming this way, as opposed to going the way they've been going. So that's why I wanted to bring out just that little bitty point to consider. We could pick it up from 7 verse.
Verse 7. For the cherubim spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and the staves thereof above. And the staves were so long that the ends of the staves were seen from the holy place even before the sanctuary, but they could not be seen without, and there they are unto this day.
We only read that the ark been taken one time. That's the only time we ever read in history. And that's by the Philistines. And that's before Saul was even king, before we even had a king in Israel, that the Philistines had took the ark. All right, so now, during the time of Judges, when every man did what was right in their own eyesight. But when we look here, at this particular time, if it says the ark is there until this date, now we know the temple ain't standing. The temple, when Moses first, dealt with the tabernacle, we're talking about 30-something hundred years ago, about 33 or more 100 years ago. So we know automatically that, the temple is not standing at this particular time. And yet we know that the Babylonians never took the Ark of the Covenant. So now what happened to it? So one theory is that it just actually sunk right in the spot, because a lot of stuff going on in the Holy of Holies, and that ark had some unique power within it. So it actually, so a lot of times it might have, that's one of the questions they say. It's sunk deep below in the very spot where the Holy of Holies were. I don't know. Nobody doing excavation, and they don't allow excavation in certain parts of Israel until this, and even this day, particular day. So we don't know what's going on. And if they did find the actual Ark of the Covenant, would they be able to deal with it at that particular time? So, but we know that it was taken one time in our history, and we know that the other legends they talk about, Menelik the first took the original one and took it in, and that's no, but so that's if you want to go with that story.
Right.
Right, what I mean? But I'd rather go with the story in the book, because if they had that and an Ark of the Covenant, one of the things about and one of the things I hear when I hear that particular story about that Menelik, one of Solomon's sons, supposed to be by the Queen of Sheba, the Queen of Aksum at the time, that he stole the Ark and left a replica there in Jerusalem. One thing I like to look at is this: how did he get it out there when the priest supposed to be in 24 watches, and the 24 watches? How you don't slip out like that and do all that stuff? That's number one. And no, and not only that, when we look, at the story itself, that if he was able, to take the Ark of the Covenant, then we would know about it even in the book, and we would know about it. It wouldn't just slipped out like that. So the Ark of the Covenant itself, being it had such quality of holiness within it, no guy gonna take it on a caravan. When David tried to just put it on an ox cart, and one guy just touched it. Now he had it in his house all this time. When he touched it, he dropped dead on the spot.
Uzziah.
When David picked it up some months later, and after he walked 6 paces, he started sacrificing for it. So the Ark of the Covenant is always the mystery, but you never read where it ever was taken but that one time. And that's one of the things, one of the mysteries, that we talk about until this very day, about where's the Ark of the Covenant at and where it lies. And if people had it, they'd be talking about what's in the Ark. Now to keep going on.
Verse 9. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb when Yehovah made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass when the priests were come out of the holy place that the cloud filled the house of Yehovah, so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of Yehovah filled the house of Yehovah.
Same thing happened pretty much
Identical.
as we get, with the tabernacle itself. When we get ready to go into the next portion of the Sidra, Wayikra, Wayikra, and he called, and when the tabernacle was erected, and the cloud came down, fire came from the Lord, and burned up the sacrifices. One of the things you gotta say, okay, what kind of cloud that you can't walk through? When planes fly through it all the time, go above the cloud, you look at it be dull and cloudy down here, and it goes up above the clouds, and next thing you know, you see a lot of light and look bright as day, and you drop below the clouds, it's cloudy again. But the plane actually goes through the cloud. So what kind of cloud that somebody can't walk through and go in? And then, read when Moses went to the thick darkness where God was way back in the Exodus, the early part of Exodus, at the near the Revelation of Mount Sinai. So how is it that a cloud could push everybody out? That's something. So we got so much mysteries and stuff that it take a good while to just to talk about all the different miracles and wonders that took place not only with the Mishkan itself, but actually took place in the temple itself. When they say, "Oh, everybody got to be pushed out," clouds don't push out. We be in a thick fog, and we be doing like this here when we driving, hitting the lights and the beams and everything like that while we driving through a thick fog. So it's hard to imagine that a cloud is like a barrier when nobody could get through and penetrate, and it pushes you out. But let's go ahead. We're going to continue right here and pick it up. It says, so the priest could not help. One of the things I like to say in the 11th verse, so that the priest could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. So that means if the priest stopped working, he supposed to be doing his job, and yet he's doing the job commanded by the Creator. And when this cloud come in, he got to stop in the middle of his work and say, I got to get up out of here. Now that's something. So there's so much going on here that I ain't finished doing my sacrifice. I ain't finished putting this in the proper order. I ain't finished sprinkling the blood over here, doing that, and whatever the case is. We all got to leave at this point in time. And yet, the purpose of doing that is to get God's closer to you. And yet you got to back off away from God. So that's a lesson in itself, that when the Creator comes and you want to be so close to him, sometimes you have to back off just from his presence. But we're going to pick it up from the 12th verse.
Verse 12 reads, Then spoke Solomon, Yehovah hath said that he will dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built thee a house of habitation, a place for thee to dwell in forever. And the king turned his face about and blessed all the congregation of Israel, and all the congregation of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be Yehovah, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth unto David my father, and have with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Yisrael to build a house, that my name might be there, but I chose David to be over my people, Yisrael. Now, it was in the heart of David, my father, to build a house for the name of Yehovah, the God of Israel. But Yehovah said unto...
One of the things is this, and because I'm getting ready to go on concluding, but I'm going to tell people when I get on to the 21st, we're going to conclude the 21st verse, but I will, try to, request that people read the prayer that Solomon prayed after that concerning this particular endeavor. But when we read about the tabernacle, like one of the things that we say that the tabernacle itself, we had from Exodus the 25th chapter to Exodus the 40th chapter, you got 13 chapters dedicated concerning the tabernacle and its function and the priesthood and the garments and everything like that. And yet you only have one chapter in the book of Genesis, and going into the second chapter, the first verse or so, about concerning the creation of the heavens and earth. And the creator built something, created something out of nothing. And he could have just thought it into being. And it took 6 days and he did it, but yet we had months of building a tabernacle that's not much bigger, not much bigger than, a football field pretty much in length, something like that, less than a football field in length, and it could fit in most sanctuaries, most large congregational sanctuaries, the tabernacle itself. And yet, when we look at that, that it took us all that time, months to build and get it together. And them beams was not light beams. Them beams could weigh, maybe a half a ton, something like that, some of the beams. So imagine the work that you had to do, not only to cut it, but erect it and make it where you could lift it up and set it in a peg, a socket, and then put a chapel on top of it. So it's a lot of oneness I'm not even focusing on talking about now, but when we study that and we say, okay, why the purpose of the details in the tabernacle? And when you're just talking about a space and God ain't gonna dwell in that space, he just gonna commune with us in that space, but he wanna dwell with us. And then Solomon, later on in his prayer, talking about that the heavens of the heavens and the heavens cannot contain thee, how much less this house would I build to your name. So what is the real purpose of going through an enterprise like that, getting everybody involved like that constantly? What are the lessons we're supposed to learn and apply to our life for doing such things as that? And so before I finish that, we're going that thought, we're going to pick it up from 18th verse.
Verse 18, it reads, But Yehovah said unto David my father, whereas it was in thy heart to build a house for my name, thou didst well that it was in thy heart. Nevertheless, thou shalt not build a house, but thy son that shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build a house for my name. And Yehovah...
That's important. That's the key for studying the details here. This very verse tells you why we should do it. You know what I mean? It said, when we talk about the 17th verse, now it was in the heart of David, my father, to build a house for the name of the Lord, like the God of Israel. But the Lord said unto David, my father, whereas was in thy heart to build a house for me, thou didst well that it was in thy heart. In other words, that you could create a space for the creator within yourself. Do you allow the creator to be there and work with you? That was the instance, the thing, where the outward house itself, you see outwardly what it takes to build a fabric that the creator will approve of. When you see the Mishkan itself, when you see the temple itself, we're not looking for another Mishkan, but we're looking for a third temple. But right. Meanwhile, how do you create space for the creator to work in your life? And God told David he didn't really need a place. David had stuff set for a place. David said, look, I'm thinking outside of me. And God said, no, you need to look inwardly, not outside of yourself, but inwardly. Create space for me within your life. Create that kind of love and that kind of a closeness with me. So now when we study about the tabernacle, when we study about the temple itself, when we study that, we actually thinking about not only the framework, but what kind of frame of mind we have to bring God into our very lives. And that God would say, I know God is with me. I'd rather not him just only being with me, I like him being within me. So I got a little more security if he's in me. If he's with me, he might step off. If he's in me, then he's working through me. And that's what basically what God said concerning David, who set up the priests, the Levites in their 24 courses and singers and stuff like that, and the ministers and music and how to enhance a praise service to the Creator. This is what David did. And that's why the Creator said, no, it's good that's there, but I don't want you building nothing outside, because where you at is where other people need to be at. Other people need something outside of them.
Right.
Because they can't keep it with them.
Right.
But you could keep this with you. And that's the uniqueness about it. But when we go further, it goes on and it say that picking up from the
verse 20 reads, and Yehodah have established his word that he spoke. For I am risen up in the room of David my father, and sit on the throne of Yisrael, as Yehodah promised. And I have built a house for the name of Yehodah, the God of Yisrael. And there have I set a place for the ark, wherein is the covenant of Yehodah, which he made with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Hallelujah.
And that concludes, but those I'll tell you to read to finish the prayer part, which goes from the 22nd verse of that same chapter, and it concludes around the 30th verse, and then also the pleas for forgiveness. So it's a really interesting chapter in that. But when we look at the tabernacle, we get a lot of things from the Genesis. You know, I said before that you got make, soar, complete, bless, sanctified works, if it's good, and behold. All those terms is used in Pekudei, and all those terms, you know, when it throughout the building of the Mishkan, which is related to the creation of the heavens and the earth. So I hope people got something out of what I said. Any mistakes been my own. I hope I wasn't too fast or too too tedious in some areas. And like I said, any questions or comments, feel free to make, you know, when you read this thing. But the main essence behind the tabernacle study is that we're studying it so that when you study it, and those that follow rabbinic tradition say that when they studied the Beit HaMikdash, the temple itself, they actually go on and create an environment within themselves where God's pleased with them by studying that. When we say prayers, you know, when we say, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable before thee, you know, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. When we say those particular prayers and stuff like that in the Psalms, that we're giving the bullocks, you know what I mean, of our lips, you know, and stuff like that. And we want the Creator to be involved in our lives internally. So as we move forward, when you don't look at the chapters of building the Mishkan or building the Beit HaMikdash, the temple itself, as being boring and stuff of that nature. Look at it as saying, oh, it's showing me a formula how to make myself into a tabernacle, how to make myself into a Beit HaMikdash. We know the tabernacle, in a sense, was around in the presence of everybody. Everybody had equal access. And when it moved, we move. The temple stayed right there. So we always had to go and pursue after the temple, and it was accessible, and there wasn't equal accessibility for everyone. All right. Everyone had a part and stake in the tabernacle. Everyone didn't have quite a part and stake in the temple. And so when we look at some of the things that's there, even with the brass that's mentioned here in the temple, you don't read when it comes to the temple, though possibly it was women's involved, and other than maybe a few donations here and there, I don't know, but we don't see that record source from the scripture. But when it came to the tabernacle, you see everybody involved, men, women, and strangers. So what happens when you're working on a holy enterprise, you don't have no sicknesses, no ailments, no arguments, no kind of war going on, because you're working on a holy enterprise as one. It's not like in the time in the Second Commonwealth when a few guys came back with a will and a won't, and you had to work with a weapon in one hand and a tool in another hand. So when we talk about the peace and the tranquility of the tabernacle, and the peace as opposed to the peace and tranquility of the temple, we don't never read where the tabernacle will ever destroy. But we read, we know it's assembled and brought down. And I know some Talmudic, things would say it was destroyed in Shiloh and destroyed in, and when, twice, I was destroyed in Shiloh one time, whatever the case is. But that's a rabbinic thing or reference to that. I didn't really see nothing like that, in the Tanakh itself per se. But when we look at those things, when it comes to those holy space, that where in your house do you have a space? And then where in yourself do you have a space for God? A lot of times we say, well, God, people say God is everywhere. He can be anywhere, but he's not everywhere. The Creator's only way you let him in. So with that, I say, once again, Shabbat Shalom, or early Shabbat Shalom and Shalom Aleichem. And any mistakes by my own, and hopefully everybody be blessed with it.
Hallelujah. Nasik, one quick question. We had this discussion at the table, at the round table, and it was about altering certain things in your body that might be maybe aesthetically don't look might not aesthetically look correct to you. If, for example, someone is born with a like huge nose, or someone is born with their ear sticking out, like completely sticking out, and
Breast
they
implants,
not well. It got into that, but the question initially was just those things, not going into enhancing body parts or anything like that. It was more so something that we could see, like, someone he has like a extremely large nose, or their ears are sticking out, anything, would it be opposing Torah if someone went and got those things taken care of for their own self ease, I guess, because they don't want to walk around with this nose, or with the air sticking out. What's your opinion on that?
If the ears and nose are just maybe, the person looking at the looks, outward book as far as the looks, it's not a deformity. So I take it it's not a deformity.
Right.
It's just that they don't like. If it's not a deformity, then my thing is that you don't need to improve it, because we all made in the image of God, but yet none of us look alike. We all unique. So imagine if I got the image of God and you got the image of God, the sister got the image of God in her, everyone that was on the planet that's a human being, a mankind, has the image of God, then how come we look different? How come no one look, even twins, you be around them long enough, you could tell the difference between the twins. So why is it so different then if we all in the image of God? Because we're meant to have our own unique contribution to the human society, and to and also to the praise of the Creator. So it's our differences that make us worthwhile. It's not what we have technically in common with each other all the time, you know what I mean, that make us worthwhile. Because if it's a bunch of gold and it's nothing but gold all around, then it started losing value, you know, in certain areas, you know, so too much of anything. So if it's not a deformity, you know, in the body, then I would say it's just a vain look. Because now, who are you trying to impress? You see yourself, but you really seeing yourself through somebody else's eyes. It's almost like the ones that sent out to spy the land, all right, the 12 princes from the 12 tribes. How could they say that they look like grasshoppers in somebody else's eyes, and so it was in our eyes? All right, that's what you thought of yourself, but you can't tell how the next person picture and see you. So when a person want to try to correct, or call themselves changing something on their body, simply because they don't feel it's correct, they measuring it up against somebody else likes, and don't want to admit that they measuring it up against somebody else likes.
So then it goes into this then. So sometimes you have women that have that go bald just like men. I guess it's called alopecia, some sort of men go bald. Some men don't go bald, some men go bald. But that happens with women, more so with men than with women. But some women do have the gene where they begin to have a receding hairline, and some of them completely go bald, just like a man's forehead.
Right.
You know, they lose hair in the back of their heads, and now they have these new transplants, right? Where you could actually take hair follicles and transplant it into parts of your hair where you're going bald. They taking your own hair and putting it
Right.
into the follicles of your hair, and your hair grows back naturally. In terms of that, would you frown upon that, or would you say a woman could go ahead and do that, or is it just let natural course take its course, and that's what it is?
In that area there, now it's about feeling good about yourself because you're making a presentation, because like you're putting on certain clothes. All right. So then you say, well, all right, the priest's garment is for glory and splendor, but the holiest part of all them 8 articles is that zeets that he put on his head.
Right.
You know, and and I spoke on it last time about why that's the holiest part of the garment that's
Right.
you know put upon his
Holy
head.
to your holy.
So but not just because it says that, because of what is supposed to be on his body, on his matrix for, on his turban for, and it stated that in YAH, you know, and so one of the areas is that if you say, okay, I want to present myself in the most great light. If I had hair and I lost my hair and I want to try to promote it back, that's one thing. Because of a certain element, a certain body, genes within it. That's one thing. But you say, well, I want to change the shape of my nose, or I don't like my ears, stuff of that nature. That's another area altogether. All right, because hair grows, you will cut it, you would shape it. When you comb it, hair come out. So I wouldn't myself, look at that as, anything that's would be condescending from what God made you, in that sense. It's just saying, okay, I got an ailment, I'm trying to work on it. Just like if a person got a vitamin deficiency in their body, and they would take eat certain foods and stuff like that to get the certain type of nutrients they need for their body, and so, or a person that might get overweight and they say, okay, I need to try to get myself in a certain physical condition. All right, that's not a vanity thing, because it's saying, look, I can't function and be all I need to be at either this weight or this week. So either I'm too weak and I need to build myself up, or I'm overweight and I need to slim myself down so I could be not only an asset to myself but to others. And so that's not about a violation in that sense. I wouldn't see it as such.
Well, I guess that will go into some of the things that I know often in Israel, and this is going off from that topic. Still on the topic, but a little bit off. It's often in Israel, we always promote the natural look and how people should look and a way that people should especially our women, that we really, you don't
Mm,
want them to have the fake hair and all that stuff. But if a woman is losing her hair and she doesn't have enough money to get a hair transplant, then and she wants to present herself a certain way, then would it be something against wigs, or they have all type of these hair
right.
pieces that they get done in order to preserve that look, for them not to feel down about themselves because of this process of baldness that has hit them. What's your opinion on that?
Well, the thing is that I would say, you're supposed to try to enhance yourself all the time. I mean, be presentable. If you're not even presentable to yourself and to others, then how you really present yourself before the Creator? Because a captive woman in the book, the first thing they do is shave her head and pare her nails to make her look unattractive. So,
Mm.
I mean, so if they're making her unattractive, and why you say making her? Do you really want her after killed them people over there that she's from? Do you really want to take a look at her for 30 days while she's moaning and groaning and crying and carrying on? Do you really want that kind of woman for your wife? So that's why, it's, and in the book, Making Kind, it says she bewailing her mother and a father and a mother,
For 30 days.
but it ain't saying she love you, you know. And then you done shave her hair and make her unattractive because what you saw in her that you want to make her a wife after you killing the people from a people. So the thing is that a woman and plus a man too as well supposed to make themselves look not only presentable before God, but to each other. I mean, your wife should always look presentable to you, because first thing, and this is what I find so humorous, is people say beauty's on the skin deep, but that's the first thing you see in a person before you find anything else. You saw them from afar, and you get to know them, and then you realize whether the surface beauty matches the internal beauty. So and the priest, he said, for glory and splendor, don't the Creator could see his heart, but he got to dress a certain way to look the part.
Look the
He
part.
got to look that part, you know. He blinging with gold thread, you know what I mean? And not only that, his garment is extra heavy, so he carrying a lot of weight around with them 8 articles of clothing when he in his major royal stuff. I mean, that's no lightweight stuff. Talking about a triple goose down, sheepskin, whatever the case is. He got some weight that he's actually working in. So appearance is very, very important. And if anybody say, okay, I want to enhance myself, one of the things about the Mishkan too is that the basin that the priests wash out of was made with the mirrors that the women's brought. So imagine they gave that up to make a base, and he said, and it's a base for washing, but also that's the same spot where they would get the water from for a woman that's suspected of committing adultery. Because now these women was doing this for the sake of godliness, and the woman that's suspected of adultery is being tried on whether she's godly or not. So I would say, a thumb up to a woman that and I'm not going with join this the thing in the midrash. I just share this with y'all.
Okay.
I share this part that the mirrors, the women used to adorn themselves during when we was in Egypt, when the men worked in the fields, making brick with no straw and everything like that. They come back, they work till they will until they can't, and then they come drag it home. So now they don't want to, cuddle up with their wife and do that husband-wife thing because they wore out. So the women used to prime themselves, make themselves look good because you're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. And so when Pharaoh was trying to just kill one person, the men themselves said, I'm not going to have any kids or no relationship with my wife. So now it creates a separation within the household. And also in the process of time, you're going to drop generations because you have no children. So the women used to try to adorn themselves and say, look, no matter how hard you work, you know, I'm here for you, looking fine. You coming from the field all muddy and wore out, and you say, okay, let me perk up. So that's one of the things why they said, and they gave that the mirrors that they used to make themselves look good for another noble purpose. So that's a midrash on it.
Hallelujah. Yeah, that was a discussion we had, and of course it went down a road that was, you know, should they be getting what BBLs? I don't know if you know what BBL stands for.
I don't know how. Y'all got to school me in those areas.
It's Brazilian Achario lift. So just substitute the English word BBL.
Okay.
You got you know, should they tuck their stomachs in and but there are a lot of things now also where, like for example, if a woman has breast cancer, right, and they cut off her breast. Back in the days, it was just, you know, they didn't used to do reconstructive breast surgeries. There was just a woman if they cut both breasts off, she just had nothing there, and she would use some type of padded brassiere to give the appearance that she still had breasts. But now, you know, the doctors give you an option of reconstructing your breasts by taking fat out of your, you know, it could be your stomach or whatever part of your body, and reconstructing that breast. So these are all different things also that, you know, that are happening in order for, you know, a woman not to lose the sense of being a woman or feeling like a woman, you know, before her husband and before, you know, people.
Well, one of the things I would say in this area too as well, you got to feel good about yourself before you feel good about anybody else. You know, that's number one.
Right.
And also that people that have crutches or a cane, that had lost their leg, maybe in a battle, whatever the case is, they had their both legs before. That means they don't get a prosthetic. Now, some prosthetics look like a real leg, and some of them just be a metal with a foot thing.
A machine,
yeah. So I'm saying, but they doing that so they can get around, and not only get around, feel good about themselves, being able to be on their own,
walk, right?
You know, be able to be, you know, move about, and not depend as much on other people, where they can actually be able to assist other people a lot better. So if you're gonna say, okay, I'm not gonna deal with crutches, cane, because now you know, I'm decrepit, or I'm not gonna deal with eyeglasses because my eyes getting dim, and that's the way God wanted us to go. You know, I mean, Jacob's eyes was dim, and Isaac's eyes was dim. You know, that's I find crazy in that sense, because if God gave us the ability to enhance ourselves, then your purpose of enhancing is what is the main goal. Why are you doing it? You know, so, and that's what make it laudable or not laudable. Why are you doing and making the move? All right. If just simply because I want to be seen, then that's a vain. But if you want to say, well, I don't want to be helpless, I want to be attractive to my mate or whatever the case is, I want to be able to perform better. If I'm a teacher, as a teacher, you got not only have a certain look as a teacher in front of a classroom, besides the skills that's involved, but if you have a horrible look, people won't even look at you. And sometimes in teaching, you got to have eyes on, not just hands on, but eyes on.
Right.
So those, it's strange that, you know, that become a major issue, you know, at the round table. But I know we get some deep conversations, because I've been up there a few times, and there'd be some real deep conversations going up there. But, you know, but it focuses people, at least that's a good thing about it, that it forces you to think about Torah and whether this will be godly and not godly on Shabbat. Because basically the time at the round table get really, really deep and insights, because now we're talking about the book, and not only we're talking about the book, we're saying how this relate to the book. So it's pretty much like Talmudic arguments.
Right. And needless to say, there was two different opinions on all of these conversations that we had. So that was interesting. So once again, Torah Nasik, we supposed to go out and feed the homeless today. So gotta cut this short. I had some more questions, but we going out today and feed the homeless. May the Most High
I'm just gonna say, you only had two opinions. So it should have been about 5 different opinions with just 2 guys. But anyway,
it was different opinions on every topic. So yes,
but anyway,